Very good evening to you. We are live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Switch TV Kenya. Now, even though Justice Weldon Korir has temporarily given legislators a reprieve, questions are still flying following the jaw-dropping advice by Kenya's Chief Justice David Maraga to President Uhuru Kenyatta to dissolve Parliament over its failure to implement the two-thirds gender rule. We go back to the Constitution and try to understand the two-thirds gender rule and why women are still being marginalized. However, we also need to consider the odds. What happens if the president decides to dissolve Parliament, both the Senate and the National Assembly? Is the country ready for a by-election, and at what cost? Representation of women in all cadres of government has been and remains minimal. Only 9.8% of the 10th Parliament was comprised of women, and only 20.7% of the 11th Parliament are women, the lowest in East Africa. But note this, two-thirds gender rule is not about representation of women in Parliament, but instead equal gender representation in all areas of government. 8 years down the line, the bill has not been implemented, and now the Law Society of Kenya is demanding that the Parliament be dissolved. How easy or how hard is this? Welcome to Tipping Point. In studio, I have Uasin Gishu Women Representative Gladys Boss Shollei and Advocate Joy Mudivo. In this show, we also speak about school reopening. Are schools, parents, and students ready? We'll speak with NAT Secretary General, who is also a nominated MP, Wilson Sossion, and Dr. Richard Boss Shollei, lecturer at the University of Nairobi. We have Onchario Yeyo to help us dissect these matters. I'm your host, Frederick Mwitiriri. All right, the question of the day: should we have nominated members of Parliament as women? Should we have nominated members of Parliament as women? Talk to me via our SMS number, that is 111 444 111. 111 444 111. Use the hashtag Tipping Point. All right, let us delve right into it. And we start with what Kenyans have to say about going back to school this coming Monday.
Hakuna pesa sasa ukisema unataka kurudisha mwanafunzi kwa shule. Hata ukiangalia hata huko nyumbani hakuna chakula.
The tertiary institutions should have come first. It being that mostly adults are actually tertiary institutions are comprised of adults, and they can actually comply with the set guidelines easily without close monitoring. But it is funny that they have instead chose to begin with the primary schools who are small kids and require a lot of close monitoring.
It just doesn't make sense. There was a time they said, some said that some schools, they're going to carry forward the fees to next month. Some use their fees. So it just can't come from nowhere, and maybe a parent has been at home. He hasn't been working.
Alingojea mpaka January next year. Hata kama watarudisha the whole system for 1 year. Watengeneze madarasa na madawati pia na maji na kila kitu. Areas ambazo zina upungufu wana mpangilio mzuri, wasiwe na haraka tu kufungua areas zile.
It's not wise that we're out here and yet our politicians out there are holding rallies, but students are back home. Most of the students are getting idle. It's a generation getting lost.
And this is what the CS Education CS Health Mutahi Kagwe had to say on schools reopening.
Schools are not opening for term work. They are opening, especially the younger kids, so that they can also get used to being in school. They have been out of school for a long time. And in a way, it's also for us to see, what we need to do as we move into next year, so that if there are challenges that we are going to face, let's face them now. If we are going to have any measures that we need to take, we can put them in place. But I can tell you that the Ministry of Education is going to observe very, very strict guidelines, and they are doing so, and we are working.
And now, earlier on, I spoke to Dr. Richard Boss Shollei, and I asked him this very simple question, his take on school reopening starting this Monday, and this is what he had to say.
There are many things that are supposed to have been done before the schools reopen. The COVID-19 protocols require that schools prepare really well. They're supposed to have or to be in compliance with those protocols before they are open. but I've not seen commensurate action from the Minister of Education demonstrating that these things have been put in place so that when our children go to school, they are not spiked by this disease, which again would be disastrous given our health facilities across the country. The challenges that we have we might not be able to cope if this thing swings back if all those conditions are not put in place.
Dr. Richard Bosire, who is a lecturer at the University of Nairobi. And now, this is the question. Should we have nominated members of parliament as women representatives? Should we have members of parliament who are nominated to be just women? Talk to me on 111 444 111 111 444 111. We are live on Facebook, Twitter, and on YouTube. Now, I have Gloria Oruba, and who is a youth policy analyst. And Gloria, you've heard what Dr. Bosire has said, that we were not ready. We were not ready for this. Schools are not ready. The protocols that were supposed to be put in place are not there. What is your take about going back to school starting on Monday?
I think it's been a very long journey, just as we started the whole pandemic, the lockdown, all the way in March. We had expectations as parents that the committees and the stakeholders that were put together responsible for business continuity would have come up with measures that should have by now been implemented. So when I hear certain individuals of authority speaking to say that we are not ready, our institutions are not ready, it's saddening because I know for a fact that we've had committees sit down, paid committees, taking allowances and trying to take us forward past this pandemic. My take on it is these baselines that they've put for us, these restrictions or what the intentions that they have with the school learning institutions when we go forward, whether it is having taps on every 3 or 4 meters, whether it is having the social distancing through the desks. I believe these are things that literally we should have already been able to implement like 2 months ago. So it's a bit of it's like a waste of resources that we have committees sitting and we are never ready and we are never taking off. We are simply just constantly always second guessing our decisions. And so we've not really implemented anything, and we are suddenly in a place where we are like that bird that cannot take off.
But Gloria, this is what Dr. Bosire had to say. He's saying that the spike might just come back immediately after we open. And this is what he had to say.
It would be disastrous. I'm telling you, it would be disastrous if kids went to school and there is a spike, because it would be impossible for us to manage, given that our health systems are not as developed as those in Italy, in the United States. For example, the US opened Florida, they opened California, and all these people, you know, they got a spike and they had to close quickly. And remember that their facilities are well developed. I do not know how that what our response will be, because you know, it will be disastrous. Our kids will suffer, and you know, once that happens, parents will have to rush and pick their kids, or kids have to be taken to the hospitals. It's quite, I can't. It's unimaginable. So there must be caution. The minister must actually exercise caution. The CS must exercise caution. Because if this thing happened, I think the successes they wanted to have in management of this disease will be down the drain.
Now, Gloria, you hear what Dr. Bosire is saying, that it will be disastrous. What's your take? Do you think we are going to have a disaster immediately we open? We have kids who, I don't think we have the capacity to test all students who are going back to school. I don't think we have the capacity to test the teachers. Do you think we are going to have a spike? And if you have a spike, what next?
You know, I'm not a medical practitioner, but I also understand the fears that are out there in terms of if we open the economy, if we open the schools, this might happen, that might happen. My question always goes to these people is, then what are we going to do? Because we can't continue to sit in our houses. We can't continue to isolate these children, because if they're not going out to school to carry out their education, to be able to grow and develop in a social kind of space, they're suffering from other things when they're staying at home. You can see the number of teenage pregnancies that has just shot up in this short period of time. So, I mean, I hear those fears, and I'm not a medical practitioner to be able to say authoritatively that we will not have a spike, but I'm a parent, and I'm a parent of a teenager, and I understand that at one point life must go on. So the question then becomes, what can I do as a parent, as a responsible citizen of this country, that will ensure that we have some sort of life after COVID in terms of education for our children, and still be able to somehow deal with the risks of the pandemic. Now, one of the things that is being thrown out the window is, fine, let's not reopen the schools physically, but can we not reopen the academic, like the learning part of it, whether it is now saying that, our schools, our physical structures are too small to be able to implement certain things like the social distancing, like, having the 1 meter apart desks, like having taps everywhere. Some institutions don't even have running water. Once we have acknowledged this is impossible, these regulations that we are trying to implement are impossible, what then? How then do we ensure that our kids are still learning? They're still gaining some form of development. They're still, maturing into responsible citizens. So then we look at the other option, which is the online distance classes. So maybe it is time, if our Ministry of Education is not certainly sure about the measures, that they cannot implement those measures in all institutions, or at least in a majority of those institutions, can they give a plan B? Which, if you ask me, would be, let's go back to those laptops that we were supposed to give these students. Let's look for a way to equip them. Let's look for a way to use the Nyumba Kumi initiative to actually have business continuity in terms of the academic. Because I've had them talk about...
Gloria, let me cut you short for a while. Do you think we have the capacity to have laptops at this particular juncture? You know what happened, the scandal that was the laptop school project. Do you think it is something that can be done in the next few weeks before we resume to the schools that are being open next week? Do you think it's possible?
I think the president should give a directive to the Minister of Education and to the departments, the relevant government agencies under education, in terms of looking at that very heavy budget that was allocated to the Ministry of Education to go to certain activities such as digitizing the whole ministry, such as capacity building of the teachers. They had a budget also that was stipulating that they were going to have a new curriculum that was going to be a bit more efficient in terms of life skills and things like that. There are budget lines that can be forfeited within that Ministry of Education and channeled towards equipping the students, or at least equipping some communities, even if it's going to be some sort of group, home-based group online learning. But we do have budget lines that are being spent under the Ministry of Education on things that are not necessarily a high priority, because remember, the budget came out, or rather the budget was deliberated way before we had anticipated this pandemic. So as much as we know that we have lost a lot of money through the COVID billionaires, through all these scandals on the managed equipment services, I believe that there is money and or other budget lines within the Ministry of Education, and if not heavy enough within the Ministry of Education, we can look into the other ministries and try to see, okay, what is a priority at this point in terms of business continuity on the health sector, in the education system, and then try to accommodate our highest priority now, which is ensuring that our children are learning.
And Gloria, you are saying well, and you are saying that we can revert to online learning, and you are saying very well that life must go on. But education experts are of a different view, that indeed the online education has been tried for the last several months. But these are the results. And Dr. Boss Shollei, what do you have to say about just learning through online, the effectiveness of it?
Children getting the best education and skills in both theory and practice, but it's to rush because there's no way you can do any practical learning while you are online. There are those who are supposed to plant, for example, crops and monitor their growth. The students who study horticulture, they are not able to do that. But I'm sure they are told, you write a report so that you can graduate. And some students or most students could be motivated by that. I want to leave the university. I want to graduate and go and do, and look for a job. It is not right. We are not doing service. We are actually doing disservice to our country. We are doing disservice to our country. It will hurt us in the future. Most students are not able to sign on onto those classes. So out of a class of 200, you find only 40 to 50 students attending. So 3/4 of the students don't attend. If they were not taught, how would they do, for example, special exams? It will be wasting time. We must train the students. They must acquire skills. They must acquire the knowledge before they are tested and released to the job market. Online teaching is a good thing, but so far it is not successful. It has serious challenges. It is increasing the gap between the rich and the poor. It is not properly done. And I wish that universities could have sat down and find out the best way they can deliver curriculum. We could stay away. We could stay away for that time, or some subjects could be taught, but not to tell everyone to return to the university or to get university education online, when actually what they are remaining with is practical work.
Dr. Richard Boss Shollei, who is a lecturer at the University of Nairobi. Right now, I'm joined in by Uasin Gishu women representative, that is Gladys Boss Shollei. And many thanks for joining us this evening. And just to put you in a context of education, just before we delve into Parliament and what the CJ said, Mami, do you think we have enough time to just go back to school right now? Do you think it is prudent to go to school right now? Do you think our students are ready to just go back to school as it is right now?
Thank you for having me, and my apologies for being late. But I think, the curfew is still on, as far as I hear. The bars are still closed. They are not opening them. The churches have not been fully reopened. The children are not even going to Sunday school because the children, So the question is, why do you want to start with the schools? I would have assumed that they would open other parts of the economy first and then see if there is a spike. But don't use our children as guinea pigs. I don't think the schools would be the first place. We've not got an explanation as to, when you open the schools, have you checked the capacity of the schools to be able to manage the public health issues? Because not just taking the kids, you'll say we are doing social distancing, the teachers will be, staying away, this much space away from the children, the students will not be sharing desks and nobody touching anyone, they're not going to be sharing textbooks. So all those protocols haven't been explained to us as parents. And I think they should almost describe it to us on a school-by-school basis. So just to start with reopening schools is quite dangerous. It's like using the children as guinea pigs.
Many thanks, and we'll be talking about that and so very much more. We are joined by Uasin Gishu women representative Gladys Boss Shollei. I'll be talking about the dissolution of Parliament. This afternoon, we had new orders from Justice Weldon Korir. What does it mean? I'll be talking about that and so much more. As we take a quick break, I am asking you, should we have nominated members of Parliament as women? Should we have nominated members of Parliament as women? Talk to me on 111 444 111 111 444 111. Take a quick break. I'll be back with more. All right, you're talking to me via our SMS line, that is 111 444 111. We're live on Facebook, Twitter, even on YouTube as Switch TV Kenya. Now, the Law Society of Kenya has emphasized that President Uhuru Kenyatta has until October to dissolve Parliament over the 2/3 gender rule. The society wants MP salaries stopped, security withdrawn, and parliamentary precincts and constituency offices closed on October the 12th. LSK President Nelson Harvey has reiterated that there is no lacuna in law on what happens going forward, noting that IEBC should conduct a mass by-election within 90 days. Chief Justice David Maraga had called for dissolution of Parliament, citing its several failed attempts to enact the gender bill despite 4 court orders.
The President will be in violation of the Constitution should he fail to dissolve Parliament on or before the 12th of October 2020. Regardless of the President's action or inaction, Parliament will be unlawful effective the 12th of October 2020. The consequence of this is this: any legislative authority exercised by Parliament subsequent thereafter will be without the authority of the people of Kenya. Any oversight of state organs exercised by Parliament will be without the authority of the people of Kenya. These Kenyans is the anathema that those we elected want to subject us to. It is incumbent upon the people of Kenya to refuse to be taken through that perilous path. It is therefore expected of any judge before whom the challenge on the advisory by the Chief Justice has or will be made to uphold the Constitution, no matter what pressure may be put to bear on him or her by the self-assured individuals behind any such ill-advised litigation. And we
Of course, that was LSK President Nelson Harvey talking about dissolution of Parliament, but this was just before Justice Weldon Korir stopped the implementation of the CJ Maraga's advisory of dissolution of Parliament. Of course, until the case filed by 2 individuals is hard and determined. Now, I'm joined by Uasin Gishu Women Representative Gladys Boss Shollei, and you've heard the sentiments, you've heard what LSK is saying, you've heard what Kenyans are saying. A majority of Kenyans and most Kenyans are saying we should dissolve the Parliament. What is your take on this, Mheshimiwa?
I highly support the dissolution of Parliament, not because it's my personal feeling, but because that is the dictation of the Constitution, which is by the will of the people of Kenya. So it's a matter of following the Constitution. It's not whether someone finds it convenient or thinks that it's unfair. And so I fully agree. Chief Justice Maraga did what was required of him by law.
Do you think we are ready for by-election 2 years to the national general elections?
It's inconvenient, yes. But remember that if a member of parliament dies, God forbid, there will have to be a by-election anyway. So already our laws and our constitution and the IEBC is designed for any eventuality. So that is why IEBC is not appointed only during the election time. They are in office throughout the electoral cycle because they should be capable of running elections. The reason why the law puts it 90 days is sufficient time for them to be able to prepare for elections. So I think the argument about it's not convenient, we have Corona and so on, is neither here nor there. The Constitution of Kenya is supreme. Remember, every member of parliament took an oath of office and swore to uphold, defend, and protect the Constitution of Kenya. They were fully aware that that particular clause was in the Constitution. So they don't have a choice. And remember, when Kenyans elect you, they elect you to go and do a specified job. And they also elect you so that you can help them implement the Constitution. When you fail to do that job, then you no longer have any moral authority to remain in that office. Hence the reason why the Constitution puts dissolution as an option.
Studio, I'm joined by Oyeyo, who is a political analyst. And Oyeyo, thank you and many thanks for joining us tonight. You've heard the sentiments that are being given by Uasin Gishu women representative Gladys Boss Shollei. Yeah. In your view, are we ready? Are we ready for a by-election that huge? Are we ready to send all parliamentarians, both the Senate and the National Assembly, home? Are we ready at this particular time? 2 years to the general elections.
Now, the question of readiness does not arise when it comes to the supremacy of the Constitution. There's a reason why the Constitution is upheld as the supreme law of the land. So it foresees all these problems, and every single moment, so long as the moment calls for that kind of activity or action, we should be able to do that. So the Constitution calls for the dissolution of Parliament, both, the National Assembly and the Senate, and it should be done accordingly, as per the advisory from the Chief Justice. I know we can talk about readiness, we can talk about lack of money, we can talk about COVID-19, but you know what happened? We got money for COVID-19, and we still install it. So we are ready to do a by-election, we're ready to conduct an election, because that is what now the situation calls for. We can talk about inconvenience, we can talk about so many things, excuses. The Constitution must be upheld. So the advice of the Chief Justice is on point. And I agree with the woman representative. I think I like the kind of position she's taken, and I expect more lawmakers to support her, that position. And we support, defend, and uphold the letter of the Constitution at all times.
All right.
Regardless of the convenience or inconvenience of the moment.
Gloria, because you are an advocate, what do you foresee now that there is a case that has halted the advisory by the CJ Maraga? What do you foresee? Are we going to see a case that is going to forestall the whole process? Are we going to see MPs going home anytime soon?
Point of correction, I'm not an advocate, but I'm a youth policy analyst and I advocate for youth empowerment. Although my take on this is...
Throw to women representative. Yes.
Yes. The conversations that we should be having are the choices that our president has. So for me, where I sit, I'm looking at it as 4 choices. He either has to accept the advice that has been given to him and dissolve parliament, or he can delay, he can play with the delay tactics and, try to buy time. And it's really just about not being the person that wants to take that initiative and, take us to by-elections. The other thing is that he can seek a second opinion or challenge it. But seeking a second opinion and challenging it is it's just semantics of saying that he's challenging the Constitution. And we've been told so many times by the advocates, we've been told so many times by, the law is the law. You don't argue with the law. So if the law stipulates a certain measure has to be followed, then really it is, your position is, where do you fall, on which side of that law? So how I see it right now is, however way the president wants to look at this, he has to take a decision. So unfortunately, this is not one of those things like the laptops issue or our education sector or anything that he can dilly-dally with. He literally at one point, whether it's a month, whether it's the 90 days that he's now been given, at one point he has to take a decision. And if that decision will be being silent on it or opposing it or whatever, this is now where we start talking about the legacy. This is where we start seeing that you might be putting for us the Big Four agenda and all these cozy documents, but really your actions are what is going to deliver your legacy.
Gloria, because this is a question of law, and we have a lawyer within us, that is the women representative from Uasin Gishu, Madam Boss Shollei. Now, there is a case that has been taken to court by 2 individuals, that is Leina Conchela and Abdul Munsa, and they want this whole advisory quashed. They are saying it's beyond the authority of Chief Justice David Maraga. Where are we finding ourselves in this? Are we going to go all the way to 2022 before this case is hard and determined?
I think the action of going to court is simply to cause some form of delay, because the reality is the court has ruled, various courts have ruled 4 times, indicating that Parliament must enact the legislation. So even if they get, I know that there has been an injunction issued by Justice Weldon Korir, but anyone can get an injunction. The maximum the injunction can last is 14 days. I don't even understand where the logic of appealing or trying to quash an advisory from the Chief Justice arises, because remember, the Chief Justice did not make any judicial decision. The Chief Justice simply made a communique as head of the judiciary to the president, because the law requires that when a court order has not been, as required in the Constitution, has not been obeyed by Parliament, then the way of the consequences of Parliament or the punishment is by the president, because the president is the only one who has the power to dissolve Parliament. And therefore, the Constitution made it very clear. So first of all, you cannot, the fact the Chief Justice wrote too much in his opinion, in that communique. All he needed to say is that there is a court order, and this is the court order. Parliament has failed to comply with that order in accordance to Article 261 of the Constitution, and therefore, in passing on to that article of the Constitution, I am required to advise you to dissolve Parliament. That is all he needed to say, and send it to the president. And the words in the says, the Chief Justice shall advise the president to dissolve Parliament, and the president shall dissolve Parliament. No one has a choice here. Chief Justice Maraga had no choice, neither does the president. So the president has two choices. Either he dissolves Parliament in accordance to the Constitution, and we expect him to do it because the law implies almost immediate, but reasonable time is normally expected, which means it will be anything between 14 and 21 days.
All right.
And then
yes,
the choice the president has is to disobey the court order. And if he does, then he's in gross violation of the Constitution according to Article 145, and therefore he can be impeached. So either he goes down in history as the president who disobeyed the Constitution that he held aloft in Kasarani before millions of Kenyans, saying that he will defend and protect. But at the same time, if he dissolves Parliament, then his legacy is gone, because he's already out of time on his big four. If he wastes another 90 days, then he will have no legacy to speak of. So the president is in a catch-22 situation.
Oh, very well. Thank you, and thank you for that. And this is what some of the MPs, some of your colleagues in Parliament, had to say about dissolution of Parliament. They seem to have a different opinion.
Yeah, you're not fighting with the judiciary.
Parliamentary Service Commission, I support the move to go to court for further interpretations. We must have that further interpretation clearly before we rush on the issue of dissolution.
The matter has now gone to the president, who will either decide to dissolve Parliament, or because there is that lapse in the Constitution about timelines, he can choose to dilly-dally.
You hear what some members of Parliament are saying. You're hearing what the women representative from Uasin Gishu, Gladys Boss Shollei, is saying.
Yeah.
Now, if we dissolve the Parliament, what some of you are advocating, what some of the MPs are advocating, which some MPs are not advocating for, if we today dissolve the Parliament, how long do we have to conduct the next general elections? Are we going to see a situation where we are going to have a lot of confusion? Because now this throws the BBI process under the bus. This throws the whole idea of having a referendum under the bus. Are we going to have a lot of confusion before 2022?
Well, confusion is inevitable, whether there is a dissolution of Parliament or not. In fact, ever since the president began his second term, the country has been in perpetual confusion. Every single moment is a moment of confusion for Kenyans. Mm-hmm. If it's COVID money, it's stolen, everyone is confused. The president cannot tell us where the thief is. If it's about Parliament acting, it's again confusion. They've taken so long to even approve you know, the sharing of funds. Every moment is a moment of confusion. So we can as well have these guys, you know, these clones sent home, okay? Kenyans can wait.
Well, we cannot call them clones, but because they are members of parliament and they're elected. Let's give them because they've been elected.
In fact, I'm of the opinion that when Americans at some point insisted on someone having gone to school to qualify as a voter, they were right. Sometimes we elect people we get ashamed of when we look at what they do. Kenyans are in support of the whole idea of dissolution. And an idea that is in contravention of the
Are you sure Kenyans are for it? Let's see. We spoke to some of the Kenyans. My director, please play some of the clips. We spoke to some of the Kenyans, and this is what they have to say about dissolving parliament.
We have to respect the constitution. If it means you have to go and have a by-election and have parliamentarians come back, be voted back, so let it be.
The CJ is just doing his job according to the constitution. And if it means going for a by-election, I think we really need to do according to the constitution.
Maraga hata kijaribu kuingilia mambo ya kufunjwa kwa bunge, hii serikali hatuna tumaini naye.
The president shouldn't go ahead to dissolve the parliament because it brings some kind of, there will be some lacuna, there will be some void if the president goes ahead to dissolve the parliament.
Vile Maraga alikuwa amesema ivunjwe. Kama bunge imekataa kupitisha sheria na ziko kwenye constitution, ile 2/3 agenda ya wamama, ivunje watu waende nyumbani. Hakuna maneno ingine.
All right, some of the SMSs that are coming in through 111, 444, 111, and there's so many. Not possible. I think it's ridiculous. Men should just be equal ratio to women for gender equality. Why should we have a slot for nominated members of parliament to be women? What if we have many of fully elected in general election women as MPs? We'll still have so many women. Fred, these children are now mingling in the society freely. Some even getting impregnated. We talked about students going back to school. Does it mean this virus only exists in schools? Kenyans, let's think through. Please forget about laptops. Doesn't work. Open the schools. That is the only hope. Jane from Nanyuki. All right, Gloria, you hear what some Kenyans are saying about dissolution of parliament. Eventually, there seems to be an agreement here that we are going to dissolve the parliament. Then what next? What next?
What next is we go for a by-election. And to be honest, I'm one of the Kenyans who's really excited about the idea that we'll send all our members of parliament home, because I feel as though a lot of the youth are currently, they've been ready since last elections, and now at least they've gotten the gist of how to get into politics. So I feel like this is the opportune time, send them home. And why are they so worried? If you've been doing the right thing, you've been serving your constituencies, you've been executing your duties as a member of parliament, you've been in touch with the people on the grassroots, you shouldn't be worried. In fact, you should be resigning. You should be saying, I'm not going to wait for parliament to be dissolved. I'm ready to resign, because if I go back to the polling station, 100% I'll be voted back in. So most of them are worried because they are 100% sure that we are not going to put them back in.
Are you a member of parliament, or Uasin Gishu member of parliament, women representative? Are you worried that if we called for elections today, they are not going to re-elect you?
No, you see, before I am a parliamentarian, I am first an officer of the court. I am an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. 25 years ago, I took an oath to defend and protect the Constitution as a lawyer. So first of all, I am speaking and being faithful to the Constitution, because first, that is who I'm trained to be, long before I think about being a member of parliament. I would also like for this to be made clear. The right to life, the right to sanctity of private property is enshrined in the Constitution. So if we allow the president to disobey the Constitution in this case, he can decide tomorrow that I can disobey the Constitution and come and take away your private property. They can decide people can just kill you if they want, because you're no longer protected. The next time they'll come and say they'll take away the freedom of the media, which is enshrined in the Constitution.
Thank you.
How far, if we begin to disobey the Constitution on this one, then it means we have turned into a banana republic.
Thank you
So,
very much for
then
your sentiments. Allow
we
me to
must
just cut you
protect the
short.
Constitution.
Allow me to just cut you short because my director is telling me my time is up. Director, are you sure my time is up? Okay, Boaz is telling me my time is up. Let me just give you a minute and just tell me in like 30 seconds. Now, we will go back to dissolving the parliament.
Yes.
Are we foreseeing a situation where majority of MPs are not going to come back to the 13th parliament?
That is very likely. You know what has been happening over the last few years?
Yes.
Is that the rate at which Kenyans consume information is so high.
Yes.
So the moment you get elected and you don't deliver, you're on your way out. So the current parliament has actually failed us, and the Kenyans have been watching. So if parliament is dissolved, which I expect, as you can see, out of 5 Kenyans, 4 said, they should go home. If it's dissolved,
yes,
I expect up to around 95% of these guys to be sent packing. We get a new, group of MPs.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Let me read some of your SMSs so that you don't feel like I left you out. To add on to this, CS Magoha hasn't released funds for non-teaching staff. Wanaumia sana. Yes, we should have women, all nominated members of parliament, to be women. I'm Kelvin from Ruiru Bypass. I wish the government can sit and think again and again what it is trying to do by reopening schools. Many thanks to each and every one of you who watched Tipping Point tonight. I wish we had more time. I wish my guest came here at exactly 7:30. We should have had more time. Thank you. Many thanks, Oyeyo, for just having time for us, who is a political advisor to Governor of Nairobi. True. Mike Sonko, also a political analyst. Many thanks to Western Geshu Women Representative Gladys Boss Shollei for having time for us. And of course, Gloria Oruba, Youth Policy Advocate. My name is Frederick Mitiriri. Do have yourself a good night. And thank you for switching in on Tipping Point. Good night.